Hey folks, here we're going to take a look at a game that is currently seeking funding on Kickstarter. That game is called Home of the Brave. Now, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, I'm going to encourage you to go to the official Kickstarter project page. You can do so by following the link in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Now, Home of the Brave is a competitive strategy board game. You and the other players take control of political figures who are trying to vie for power and supremacy in American politics. And you're going to do that through a variety of different ways. Just going through and getting higher and higher positions on the path of power, senator and governor and all that type of stuff, president even, or you're trying to gain influence over specific domains of American politics, or trying to get powerful support from already famous figures, all of these types of things that you would have to do in normal American politics. But of course it is a board game, and so how you're actually going about doing that is through clever hand management and card play, and making use of the best use of the resources that you have through bidding and things like that. So of course this is a bit more complicated than I can explain right here, so what I'm going to do is give you a brief look at how the game is played with a prototype version of the game. So do bear in mind that what you see here is going to change in the final version. The most obvious thing is that the components are going to be nicer in the final version. There's actually going to be artwork on all of the cards, that type of stuff. But this should give you a rough idea of how the game plays. Then after this, we're going to come back and discuss it further. Home of the Brave is a competitive game for 2 to 6 players. Each player represents an up-and-coming political figure using whatever means necessary to achieve their goals, like increasing their influence, advancing their position, or gaining the support of powerful people. The goal of the game is to get as many stars as possible, which represent the completion of your goals. The game end is triggered when someone makes it to 4 stars. At the end of that round, whoever has the most stars is the winner. Set up the game by laying out the main board. One player is chosen at random to be the starting player, and in clockwise order, starting with them, each player will choose a character to play as. The character mat has starting resources and starting domains on one side, and places for your card decks on the other side. Take the starting resources and place them behind your player screen so the other players can't see. The relevant resources are cash, bravery points, and supporter cubes, which are activists, which are the yellow cubes, criminals, the gray cubes, Republicans, the red cubes, and Democrats, the blue cubes. You also get white and black voting discs, a pair for each player. There are also stars, which are victory points. This is the only type of resource which must always be visible to all players when you gain them, so that everyone can see what your progress is. Large player pieces are placed at the start of the path of bravery, and small pieces are placed on the outer wheel of the appropriate domain, as indicated by your player mat. These domains are the particular areas of influence that are important in politics. Each player gets several decks of cards, and will shuffle the basic, advanced, and black file cards and place them on the appropriate side of their playmat. 3 starting cards are placed face up nearby for all to see, and a goal deck is shuffled separately for now. Every player gets 3 cards from their basic deck, 2 from their goal deck, and 1 card from each of their opponent's black file decks, but never their own. The rest of the goals are shuffled into the basic deck. A deck of the large voting cards are shuffled and placed near the recess area. The game preparation card will tell you which supporter cubes to place in the resource area, along with neutral cards that are flipped over into the appropriate spaces. Finally, the preparation card will tell you how many supporter cubes of each type to place in the draw pouch. After they're placed there, randomly draw out the indicated amount and place them in the National Mall. Now, you can begin. But first, let's go over player card types. Basic cards have the 1 on the back. They're an easy way to get resources, either by playing them, discarding them, or using them while you dominate a certain domain. If that deck runs out, or you advance your career enough, you can access the Advanced 2 cards, which are far more powerful versions of the 1 cards. Black file cards, conversely, are extremely bad for you. And while you may have the deck in front of you, it's other players that will be drawing your color and using them against you. These cards can make you lose resources, but the effect compounds if they play several cards with the same letter against you, even potentially making you lose stars. Goal cards are one of the primary ways you can get stars and win the game. Assuming you have leadership in at least one domain and can pay the very high cost in gray of using the card, you activate the beneficial effect, which may be getting stars directly or setting yourself up for doing so in the near future. Starting cards are a mixture of beneficial effects you'll always have access to that are unique to you, but also drawbacks, like being bound to the will of your party and suffering penalties when votes don't go the party's way. You will eventually gain neutral cards, which are like basic and advanced cards, but often have a cost associated with them and may even help all players at times. Every round of the game has 3 phases: voting, action, and end of round. While playing, the special silver rule is always in effect. Players may always discuss and negotiate with each other and broker deals by exchanging resources or the promise of future support. However, while material exchanges must be honored right away, you are not bound to fulfill a future promise. Lying may occur. The voting phase starts with resetting the neutral cards so that 4 new ones are face up, and the starting player adds new supporter cubes of their choice to recess until there are 4 again. Next, the starting player draws a voting card, reads it, and everyone will proceed to vote on which effect happens. Each voting card has 2 outcomes, one keyed to the black voting chip and one keyed to the white voting chip, and whichever one receives the most votes will take effect. Outcomes are either rewards that are given to players who have leadership in the relevant domain, or global penalties that affect all players, like blocking off the usage of cards. A player is considered a leader in a domain if they manage to move their small token into the colored section of the domain. After revealing the card, the players can negotiate and attempt to bribe each other to influence the vote. But eventually, each player secretly takes either a black or white disc into their closed hand from behind their screen, whichever one matches the outcome that they desire. Or they abstain by secretly taking no disc into hand. Now, if a disc is taken, you can also secretly include any lobbying resources you want to add, which can help in the case of a tie. Then, everyone simultaneously reveals their hand. If one color of disc has a clear majority, that outcome occurs from the voting card. In the event of a tie, add up any lobbying resources on each side of the vote to break the tie, if they were included at all. If it's still a tie, nothing happens. But regardless, any used resources are lost to the bank. The action phase is the main part of the game. Starting with the current start player, each player in clockwise order will take 1 action until everyone has passed. The first type of action is playing a card that has a lightning bolt action icon. Pay the cost by using resources from behind your screen, discard it, and gain its effect. Many cards will have an additional effect if you have leadership in the right domains, or if another player agrees to lend you that power if they are the leader there. You can even sometimes give black cards to other players to gain the additional effect as well, but of course, those black file cards will come back to haunt you. Another type of action is either playing a continuous or supporter card down to the table, or activating one that's already there. Playing a card for the first time lets you immediately activate it, but you are limited to 4 cards with the continuous symbol in play at any given time. Also, as an action, as long as the card is still in the vertical position, you can turn it horizontally to gain its effect on future turns. These cards are not discarded and can be used again later. Just like action cards, many of these cards have a secondary effect if you are in the proper position in the domains. Another card you can play for an action is, of course, the black file cards. With one action, you can play 1 or an entire set of 3 with the same letter against another player of the corresponding color. These can be devastating to that opponent and net you 1 or 5 bravery points, depending on if you play 1 or a full set. Of course, given the silver rule, you can blackmail the target player for resources if they don't want you to play them. Discarding a card is another action, and lets you gain resources if the card has a discard effect. Some cards also let you gain position in one of the domains. If you're not in a domain, you place one of your tokens in the outer area. If you're already there, you move into the leadership spot if it's empty. If someone is already there, you must have an influence duel by secretly bidding resources in your hand and seeing who comes out on top. The last of the regular actions is advancing on the path of bravery. Moving from level to level costs a certain amount of bravery points, and you must exhaust any one of your continuous or supporter cards that are in play. The first 2 advances also let you give out black file cards to get a discount, and the third advance lets you pay extra bravery to get either cash or supporter cubes. Each level unlocks a different benefit, such as unlocking your advanced deck, getting cash, increasing the number of cards you have in play, increasing your leadership in a domain, and at the top 2 levels, gaining stars. If you can't or do not want to take any more actions, you can pass. While you can still negotiate or be targeted, you can no longer take any actions this round. As compensation, you get to take one supporter cube and one face-up neutral card, but they do not refill until the start of the next round, so passing early gives you more options. One other thing. During the game, players' actions will let them take supporter cubes from the National Mall. If those run out, the starting player, in between any player turns from after this happens, may optionally call for an additional vote. It functions just like a regular vote, and afterwards the round continues where it left off as normal. When everyone is passed, the round ends. All used table cards are reset to their vertical positions, and blocked cards are unblocked. Everyone gets to draw 3 cards from either their basic or advanced deck if they unlocked it. Remember that gold cards are also mixed in with the basic cards, so this is a new opportunity to get those. The starting player token passes to the next player in clockwise order, and a new round begins with the voting phase. The game end is triggered as soon as someone gets 4 stars. The silver rule is then negated for the rest of the round. No negotiations or trades are allowed, and domain leaders can't give other players permission to use leadership effects. Play to the end of the round, and then determine who has the most stars and is therefore the winner of the game, with ties going to whoever still has the most bravery points behind their screen. That is Home of the Brave. Well, of course, American politics is like this giant morass of different branches and sub-branches and committees and PACs and every individuals and groups and entities and lobbying firms all vying for power. Trying to translate all of that into just one game is a daunting task, but I think that Home of the Brave is most interesting because it makes a really good go of it. There's so many different aspects of the game that are representative of these larger ethereal political concepts. Right from the get-go, you're choosing characters that are based on, they are from different political parties and action committees or just independents trying to get their own agendas passed. Everyone has their own unique goals that they're working towards. Obviously, it all breaks down to get those stars, win the game. But the fact that there is that extra mile to inject this theme and to make everyone feel unique, and of course, when the final version of the game, there'll be all this high quality artwork as well that really hits the theme home even more. And then how you're actually using your cards and your starting influence from the factions that you belong to, how you're using all these things is in very deep hand management, trying to manipulate different areas of the board. Obviously you want to go down the path of bravery as soon as you can, because that's one of the most direct ways that you can get not just better resources, be able to have more cards in play and draw more cards and things like that, but eventually get those stars, which it only takes 4 to trigger the end game. Every single star is critically important, so you want to go down that path as quickly as possible. How are you going to get down that path? You need the bravery points. How are you going to get those bravery points? Complete your goals. Go out and try to get, in order to complete your goals and to use some other cards, you're going to need to have power in the domains of American politics and try to gain leadership. Or, and this is one of the critical parts of the game, be able to influence the other players and either blackmail or bribe or beg them to give you the power that you need. Sometimes you can just make a straight up deal, like I'll give you these resources, you give me those resources, which could be supporters as well, which is another interesting aspect, that it's not just cash and abstract bravery points, it's also actual supporters, Democrats, Republicans, the crime section, which of course is an omnipresent part of American politics. But you can make a straight up deal like that, or future promises of power, or say, hey, I don't have power in the domain, the leadership in the domain that I would need to activate this card, or do this goal, or do this thing. So, how about letting me use it for now, and I'll give you something, or the future promise of something, and hopefully I'm not lying, because I'm not bound to that. So there's a lot of wheeling and dealing in this game, which of course is again directly thematic to what American politics is actually like. But for you strategy game heads out there, this is deep strategy. You need to make sure you're using your cards to the best of your ability. Make sure you're managing your resources to the best of your ability. Always be pushing forward with your goals. Always be willing to bid strong, because this is a bidding game as well, and make the best use of either blackmailing or working together with your opponents, perhaps against another opponent, but knowing they can stab you in the back later. All of these different things are going on, and you can't stop for a moment because, again, the margin of error for victory, it's a razor's edge. 1 point can determine whether or not you're going to win the game, because the chances of you getting many points are slim, and yet there are so many different ways to do that. So if it makes it sound like this is an incredibly deep and complex game, it is, and yet I would say that if you have experience with strategy games, it's not overly daunting. It's actually surprisingly fast to set up and not too long to teach for the first time. And because of how thematic the game is, it's very intuitive. And once you have your first game done, everything's going to make sense, and setting it up and playing for future games is going to be a lot easier for you. So, if you like strategy games, if you like games based on American politics, and there are some other ones, but not too many, surprisingly enough. There's not a lot of games based directly on American politics like this. And if you just like the general concept of a wheeling and dealing bidding game with strategy, then listen, or maybe you know someone that likes this, don't take my word for it. Go to the official Kickstarter project page and find out more for yourself. You can do that by following the link in the top corner of your screen or down in the description section underneath this video. Those links will take you to the page, find out more, and hopefully consider backing the project. That is Home of the Brave. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, for supporting our sponsors. Take care.